glad this is happening, and I'm glad that it's happening here. I'm glad it's happening now, because I love now, and also I love that this album represents right now, and I'm excited to talk about this amazing record that I enthusiastically fell in love with in front of a group of strangers about a few weeks ago.
That was fun.
You know, I feel like this has been a real journey is the right word, because I feel like when you fall in love with an artist or someone's music or art, you do begin a journey with them. And I was talking to Josh about this last night, Josh Klinghoffer, and he was saying how when he was young, falling so deeply in love with the Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam, and now being a part of each of those families respectively, there's this undeniable connection that you build when you're a fan of something, and if you make music, it does draw you closer. And I feel like you know that more than anyone, because that's kind of been your life, like fan and now friend and then colleague and collaborator and the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think the other thing too is to go from the audience to the stage. So that's another. I don't know. I think you have as opposed to someone who maybe kind of just grew up, you know, or had opportunities early, or was very comfortable with being on stage, or, you know, it's a little different, you know, fighting for an opportunity to get on that stage, or at least giving it your best shot. You know, it's a rarity, you know, to succeed in that kind of way. And as it goes, it just gives you further and further appreciation for the ability to be on that stage, the fortunate feeling of having people that care what you do on that stage, and also the overriding kind of grace, and that you're feeling useful, you know, something in your life that you're able to do to just be useful.
You know, you share it so openly. I've watched so many Pearl Jam performances in different environments, online and whatnot, and one thing that always comes across, and that is that you love to make the audience feel like they're on that stage. Like, you really, there's no barrier there at all. And when I was growing up, I don't know how it was for you when I was growing up, like, that barrier was kind of part of what was that was sort of the marketing part of the excitement, you know, like, you'll never get up here, you gotta worship me, this is a rock show. And you just don't have that thing about you at all. You get up there with your friends and you're like, if I could do this in the front row, I would.
Right, yeah. You know, some of that escapism thing, that's valid too, and that's useful too. It's just really how you know, in some ways, you know, we're here in Chicago, even being we're talking about baseball, and we're talking about a lifelong fan of a team, but the beauty that is Wrigley Field and the history that is the Chicago Cubs and all that. When I knew people that worked with the team, they were very close, and some of the players and managers, and when I was kind of allowed to be in areas that
fans don't get to go,
average fan would not have that kind of access, they would love to have it.
Yeah.
And they would be soaking everything up, and I feel like I was doing that kind of for everybody. You know, I was just like soaking it up, and would have stories to tell all my friends forever based on that. And in the same way, you could apply that to music too. You know, I just feel like I'm getting to appreciate it for, you know, a lot of people.
My story with you began with you in Seattle, and then I got to know you better through your music and the stories, and so I traced it back to San Diego, and then I finally traced it back to Chicago, and then I realized that it's always been Chicago, and then it's like you being here in this city. So I guess if from a fan's point of view, Seattle was where you found your family that exists with you today, and San Diego was where you went on your journey to establish your own identity. What does Chicago mean to you when you think about it?
Chicago is the original roots, you know, and they've never been completely ripped out of the ground. You know, it's just, it really did a lot of. It helped form me both as a young kid and then moving back as a young adult, and you know, some of my first like adult jobs of waiting tables and things like that were here. And, fond memories of being a kid were here. Schwinn bikes and having a little gang of 9-year-olds, like Stand By Me kind of stuff. I think Seattle is actually where a lot of the identity stuff came in, to be honest, because that's when you really had to figure out. I knew who I was as a workman, and someone who had a work ethic, and somebody who could put in the hours and kind of produce whatever you needed from them. I was ready for the workload, but as far as like who we were, or who, I think a lot of that got formed up in Seattle in a way.
You're a family man, not just a family man, like I'm a family man, but you're a family man. Like, you love to be in a group of people that inspire you, and you can inspire back. And I see that with your band right now, and the whole Earthlings with the Earthling. And, watching the movie and the way that you embraced the outside moving inside. And I was thinking about your story, and I wondered sort of how important being around those young kids when you were a young kid, and your mum opening the door to kids who needed that, and you being at the center of it because you were her son, kind of prepared you for that, and that desire to welcome people in and be a part of a group,
Consistency and loyalty are they can't be underrated, or they can't be overrated, rather. Those two things. And so when you have a long group like, the Pearl Jam group in Seattle, and all our crew, and even the people we work with the label and things, it's mostly people that have been with us since day one or the week after. And so this group of fellas, you would think that it's kind of amazing how quickly it come together, but really the threads of our relationships go way back. I mean, our first real Pearl Jam tour, outside of us just playing clubs on our own, was with the Chili Peppers and with Chad Smith, and that goes back to 92 or something. Chad and all our uncles in that group, Flea and Anthony, and then getting to know Josh over the years. I guess I'm just real fortunate. I'm fortunate that Andrew Watt, worked so closely with these guys.
Yeah.
It fit quickly and closely, and there was no alterations needed, and it was just, we kind of off to the races as far as playing and writing and recording. And, Andrew had so much to do with that, and every aspect of that.
I mean, he tells me a story, but I'm not sure I've heard it from anyone else but him. So, but I'm sure you know it, which is that being a sort of lifelong fan of the band, that he had, there's something in the story where he found himself on the receiving end of a birthday message, or there was something where the connection was still, after he made that first connection, he was still by rights the fan, not on the road to friendship. Do you know what I mean? Is this familiar to you, like how you got to know him?
The first I knew of him was someone left me a letter and a guitar at
That's right.
the Shoreline Amphitheater in San Francisco, which was where we would do the bridge school shows.
Yeah.
And I think it was at the last bridge school, however many years ago that was.
Yeah.
That somebody said this guy left a guitar on this note for you, and it was from this somebody who was in a band that had played that venue a few weeks before, and asked that this guitar get delivered to me. And it seemed like it was a really nice letter. I gave him a call back, thanked him, and I guess when I gave him the call back, he had my number. I guess that's how that worked. Which was great.
Right.
Because then every once in a while I'd get a nice little message. He was very responsible with the number. And
I mean, you've got to be careful with that, because once you open the door, especially with somebody A, you're a fan of, and B, that prides their privacy, right? And you've been very clear about that. Like, I give you what I give you, but don't get in between the lines.
I was just feeling so grateful, I wanted to leave him a message, and whoever this person was.
Yeah.
And you know what? But yeah, sometimes it's good to put yourself out there, because
Look what happens.
he handled it great, and every once in a while I'd get a little text from him, and here and there, and it was cool. But and I knew that he was working, but didn't really know what he was working on or anything like that. And I'm just really proud of the guy. You know, he's as passionate about music as anybody I've ever met in my whole life. You know, and that says a lot because I know you.
And I know you, and we know people who are supremely passionate about music. But you're right, Andy is an enthusiastic fan.
You almost have to be careful what you say in front of
next thing the
Andrew,
phone's on
because shit could happen.
It's true.
And at some point, it's almost like be careful what you think.
He talks about you in the same way, though, in the sense that when you have to be careful, you have to be entirely ready, because when lightning strikes with you, it's like you got to get it, like you got to capture it, got to capture that performance, capture that moment.
Well, he's good because he's quick, and you know, he's, as far as just the technical side of things, microphones and signal pass that you're running stuff through, and the mix board, you know, all the technical stuff that these guys do. And he has a great right-hand man called Paul and another guy called Marco. You know, it's a real fast-moving experience as a writer that can be really, really great, you know. And you would think it would be, there's not too much pressure that you have to do it in time, but if you want to go quick and you're in that, you know, it's like this quick little, you know, like a water spout or those small tornadoes you see on the street every once in a while. It's quick.
Yeah.
And it'll last for a few minutes, and then it just kind of goes away. That could be what songwriting is sometimes.
You hear it all over Earthling as a record. You know, it's really light on its feet, which isn't to say it's not heavy and it hasn't got a lot of, you know, strong, very direct energy. But there's a sense of freedom I hear through the record, even through some of the more personal and intense songs. You're covering a lot of ground too. You know, there's moments of the need, you know, desire for reconciliation, for supporting someone through pain, loss. But it starts in this overwhelmingly positive space. You know, Invincible is just like, let me get that CB radio and start this transmission and send this message out there. And Wider Than Awake is an opening line. It's like, wow, okay. So, and that was where it began, right? And it kind of blows my mind that that's where it began, because the world was not that when that song came to you.
Well, musically is where it began, and then lyrically it was, I think it was the last thing to happen. Yes, we ended on a positive note, and our ending is really the beginning.
So what was the first lyric? That would change my whole timeline completely.
I believe it was The Haves.
Okay.
That was the first one I think we wrote together, and then Power of Right.
Yeah.
We did like a loud one and a fat. We just started writing real quick, and then decided to keep going, and then kind of get out of the way of the stuff. You know, it's funny because you can kind of timestamp what you're going through by songs and when they were played, and it would have been strange to tell, you know, the guys in Seattle, because we've been working a lot too. And it would have felt weird to say, hey, I'm going to go work with this other guy and these other people and Chad and all that. That might have felt strange, except for having just been down there, and then all these songs like falling off of trees.
Yeah.
And then they were ripe and looked pretty great, tasted pretty great.
And you're not allowing yourself at any moment during this process to second guess, to your point about, if I'm making an album here, do I tell the other guys in Seattle, like, what's going on here? What's the line I'm walking?
I know, we were talking about loyalty and long relationships,
Yeah, right?
So
What an asshole.
Yeah, musical adultery happened. But really, it was just the whole process, and then I thought, well, this might be a really interesting process because the guys might really like this too. And so then we kind of kept going, and about halfway through, then we had all the Pearl Jam fellows come down too and work with Andrew in his space and with his people and his room and those sounds, and that was feeling really good too. So it all balanced out, you know. Everyone's feeling great about it and excited about the future and recording in a little bit different way. Pearl Jam's been recording and kind of like the more laborious, long processes and spending time like in the laboratory, and that was great. But it's good to kind of move around and switch it up.
Just different energy. I mean, it's, I think about your solo records and the music you've made on soundtracks and things you've done in the past, and I'm sure it's not as conscious as this. It's my job to overanalyze things. But in my head, the way I look at it is that you sort of, okay, I've got these songs, but the ukulele's my friend, and it's not gonna blur the lines over here. I can get these songs out, and it'll be precious to me. And the soundtrack gives me the distance I need. And whereas this is a rock record, this is like you've got another rock band, and so that's where it gets interesting. 'Cause it's like, but they're your rock band. So as a fan, it's like, woo, we're really in.
I know it was
a new world.
I could feel the difference, and especially, and now even being on a tour, I mean, it's a very small tour, but it was enough to start realizing, wow, we're in a band and we're on the road, and you know what happens, and Stone's been on the road with groups, and Jeff puts out records and tours them, and I just think it informs what we do in Pearl Jam. I think all of this allows us to be more well-informed, more able to, another routes or experiences with communication with others about music, about show. I just think it's a healthy thing, and and it probably gives us. It always will give you a fresher outlook, or something. There's going to be something new that you'll be bringing back into the fold, and I can't, it's always going to be positive. If it was negative, you wouldn't bring it back in.
Exactly, and you wouldn't take these shows on the road, and you look like you're having a great time, and it's just free form, and picking the songs you're doing, and dude, that was a Lars deep cut, by the way, respect. Most people would be like, there she
Well, the last
goes.
period is a deep cut.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there she goes. It's like even Hollywood used that.
Right, and that's the one.
But I mean, it was great to hear.
You could go deeper with the cuts, though. There's so many greats.
You're probably playing a lot of these places, but for the first time in a long time, because, I mean, Pearl Jam, when you go on the road, you make it count. You want to reach as many people as you can. When you walk into these clubs and you decide what you're going to play, and I've always been fascinated by the way you approach your set list each night, because I know that you really try to sort of get inside the experience before the experience begins. Like, how is this going to inform the room and add value to people? So how do you sort of...
I got a bunch of songs. There's got to be some way to make it meaningful. There's got to be...
But I think it must be the most fun part. I think it's the most fun part. Like this whole old school cliche, like, the set list. It's like, why is that not the most fun part? Like, what do we start with?
I know.
I was going over, you were talking about the Cubs, and I was reminding myself of some of the great experiences you've had there, and I was reminded that you had a World Series experience before you had the World Series experience. And the thing that I took from that story was the Spectrum moment. Because I was like, wow, you played the last night of the Spectrum. So that's a good opportunity for me to ask someone like Eddie, who it's not just another gig, what something like that feels like when you walk into a room that's hosted so much music, and music leaves its mark. It adds to the spirit of a room. It doesn't leave when a band leaves.
Right.
When you walk into a room like that and you're the last one's going to contribute to it, like what that feels like for you beyond just notes and set lists. And
yeah, it's a lot of history. Some of these venues that we've played on this tour, some of the ones we've played, they're 100 years old. The Spectrum, the backstage is where Roger wrote Comfortably Numb for Pink Floyd. How Many Nights There, Springsteen, all these kind of historical... I think that the main thing is to celebrate it with the people there that night, and then take all those memories back with you, and kind of make sure that they live inside you. And it's good that it happened to somebody who really appreciated it, and not to mention Dr. J and the 76ers and Philadelphia Flyers. There's all these venues. There's a lot of ghosts in there. You make friends with the ghosts, and then say, if you need some place to stay when they blow this one up, you can come to my house.
Making friends with ghosts, my gosh, that's a big part of what I hear in this album. You're really open in this album about things that maybe young Eddie Vedder would have been protective of and afraid to share, is what I think, you know, as a fan. I mean, listening to this record, some of the ground you're covering and what you're talking about, some incredible lyrics. That idea of, you know, fuck your past or your fuck your future is really in evidence on the last moment on the record, On My Way, where it's like, okay, everyone knows the story, let me bring it to life in the right way. How did that happen? How did you sort of find yourself there where you were able to do that?
Well, yes, somebody that I knew through a friend of a friend, through a friend on a baseball team, and it's just the most random confluence of events. But I got 4 or 5 songs of my father singing. My father I didn't ever really know, so it was pretty intense to hear his voice. And one night,
And you waited, right? You waited a while to do that.
someone would give me the CD, and I carried it in my little suitcase bag for at least 3 months, just waiting for the right time, the right, you know, feeling. Anyways, it wasn't something I was going to throw in, or I didn't want to be driving because I wanted to be able to, you know, get home.
Yeah, be in an appropriately safe space.
Because I don't know what's on it.
And you don't know how you're going to react to it, right?
Yeah. Either way, I'm probably going to want to drink, but either celebrate or sorrow. But
exactly. Not a place for a red light.
There was reasons to celebrate, because here it was, and my dad, he sounded great.
Yeah.
He really sounded great. And I shared it with Andrew and Josh in the studio one night late. They had a real powerful experience as well, hearing my pop. And so then we decided, we just kind of added him in to the record in like a collage at the end. And it'd probably be the first time my dad was ever on a real record. And, you know, he actually did okay, you know, but he probably just, you know, he was a professional musician in that, you know, he played for tips, I reckon. So that's professional, I think.
Sure, man. If you can make it your day to day, then that's,
Yeah.
many people, that's what the dream is. But I love listening to that piece of music because A, there's the combination of your voices is wonderful, and B, it's kind of, I suppose, in a weird way, being someone who, like any human being, is kind of trying to get to that place. I was talking to an artist about this idea of tabula rasa, right? This idea of a clean slate, the practice of trying to clear as much away of your learned experiences as possible to create new experiences, right? Because we only have a finite amount of space, and more often than not, we fill it full of all the shit.
That's right.
Right, and then it's like, well, how much space can I clear to fill with good shit,
Right.
right? And I feel like this song is like,
That might have been
cleared a lot of space.
a little clearing.
A little clearing, right? Must have done.
You know, sometimes we don't know why we do things. Sometimes we meet people later that figure it out for us, like you might have just done. Thank you. I think you're right. So I think it's what's good to follow your instincts. You might not know why you're doing something. A lot of the record was like that. Like, I don't know where this is going or why, but sticking with it, I think that was another thing about working quickly, that you find yourself in places that, as opposed to working something and taking a really long time with it, you know, just long time and re-editing and you know, adding another filter. And then I think working quicker is going to get you somewhere unexpected more than when you take your time with something. So I think with the arts, or maybe right, I think, you know, even if your process is that you normally work kind of slow and methodically, every once in a while it's good to like just...
Yeah. What was the quickest Pearl Jam album you made? What's the fastest one?
Good question. It wasn't the second, and it was probably much later. Probably in the second half of No Code. I think was pretty quick for being a good record.
Yeah, it's a great record.
You know, what Andrew taught me on this one was that, you know, after you've been in a group with guys for 30 years, and they would say the same about me, like, they know how my filters run, and they know kind of like where you know, it would be like Scottie Pippen always shoots, he always comes up short. So Dennis Rodman's always going to know that Scottie Pippen's So he knows where to be to rebound because he's
Yeah.
70%. If it don't go in,
Yeah.
it's coming up
There's
short.
only so many variables human beings can
Right.
actually express in our lifetime.
Right.
I mean, we try to reinvent ourselves all the time, but really, there's a code with only so much going on.
We fall back into the whole and just because you're aware of it, that can be like, oh, see, I knew he was going to do that.
Exactly.
And I know that they know that about me. In
Yeah.
fact, I think I'm a pretty easy read. I wouldn't be a good poker player. But Andrew, I became more open to, I think it'll be good for our group. I've been able to relearn how to remain open. And that's really is one of the first things to go. It's easy to lose that. So
Yeah.
this was a bit of acupuncture to loosen up that muscle, I reckon.
It's not like you're not covering some real shit. I mean, Rose of Jericho, when I really read the lyrics, I was like, oh man, like, this is a real, like, 1-inch punch on a sort of species level. This is like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And when you listen to it at first, it's like, oh, this is a great rock song about a cool plant. but it's actually like, it's like, this plant is like really going to be here long after we're gone, and I get the feeling that one came quick.
Yeah. That stuff's always in my mind. It was just more of a way of giving it like a concept.
Yeah.
I had the really great fortune yesterday to speak with some astronauts up on the International Space Station through a Zoom call. And I knew it was going to be exciting. My daughter, who's gone to space camp and is very, like, got space and science theories and ideas running through her brain most of the time. She was
Your younger daughter.
thrilled, yeah. Her name's Harper. She's young.
Right. And the entertainment industry laments because she was so good in the footage of Ohana. That sweet moment when you guys had that duet at the end of Long Way. And I'm thinking, oh, well, that's great. We're going to get 2 incredible Vedder female artists. But no, one's going to the moon.
One's going to the moon. Yes, there's no singing in space, is that what they say? Well, I knew she'd be excited about it.
Yeah.
I asked them, what's it like getting along up there, and do they have any lessons that they feel they could share with us down here on Earth?
What did they say?
What he said is, the nice thing about up there, there's no boundaries.
Yeah.
And they depend on each other.
Yeah.
They really, truly depend on each other. And they've also been through a lot together.
Yeah.
And even in the training, they've been through so much. So by the time you're up there, it's absolutely no differences and respect. Everyone cares about each other. Again, you've created a family. I just feel like we talk about the health of the planet, and just when pandemic, world leaders that are representing a minority, but doing it in such a way that it feels dangerous, misleading. Because where should we be headed is getting along better, resolving our issues, erasing the divides.
We're so good at building them, though. That's the problem. We're such an effective species at creating problems for ourselves. It's crazy. And when you talk to your friends up in space, they're like, the only problem we have is making sure we don't spiral off in any direction.
Yeah.
Because the stakes are so high up there.
Yeah.
Because there's no artificial constructs of problems. It's
Yeah.
one problem. Stay on the right side of space.
Right. Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
And deadly.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's like, I read somewhere the other day someone was talking about your music, and they referred it to the first 2 albums as the Clinton era songs. And I was like, oh my God, like, yeah, these are songs that relate to different eras of time and whatever. And I wanted to ask you, like, because I have a certain relationship with artists and politics, and I have this thing that puts it in perspective for me, which is like, I never expect it, but I respect it if you do and you mean it, right? Mm-hmm. But I never expect artists just because you have a voice and a microphone, and you matter to me to show up. You know, it's like it's your journey. But you have shown up over and over again, and you're still talking about things that matter as per this conversation. So, you know, what is the kind of overall takeaway for someone who has never shied away from speaking your truth about the relationship between your art and making a difference in a system that is fundamentally still searching for shitty ways to fucking break society?
What I've found, and I think what our group has found, is that to talk about making a difference or suggest that other people make a difference, or, you know, having your songs be about, you know, making a difference or this issue or that issue. I think really the key after all these years is just having done that in our own lives. So without anybody needing to know, now I'm realizing I'm talking about it now, but without anybody needing to know, you just do that stuff on your own, and it's practical, and you watch it get done, or you help individuals, or you help a group, or you help, but you just kind of are able to do that, and it's more really what you learn from that experience, and maybe that informs the songs, and maybe because if that informs the songs, then you know it's real and it's right.
Yeah, it's authentic.
So it's not, you're not singing about something that might be just not unattainable or pipe dream or giving anybody a false message of hope.
Yeah.
Even though it sounds, you know, we'd rather be hopeful than the other. But I feel comfortable doing it that way.
Yeah.
Because then it's from experience, and you know it's real, and you know it is attainable. There is such a thing as like agitprop, you know, agitator propaganda. And I think that's a slippery slope, and I think it will activate people, and I think it'll get them pumped up in the, you know, in the streets or whatever, but then they walk away from the rally and then they go, all right, now what do we do? I felt like this, and it was really intense and rah-rah, but wait, what do we, you have to have those things kind of in place. Exciting people is one thing, educating them is another, you know, and really, the songs in a, you know, 3.5 minute song, it's you know, and percentages are hard to rhyme, you know. So you just try to find a way to communicate. It's really all about, you know, communicating and connecting. It's a challenge, but it's my favorite challenge.
I wasn't sure if I was going to ask you about this, because some songs are just better left to be listened to and absorbed in their own light. But, you know, it moved me so much because of, I think, this, as you get older, you realize, like, man, life is unpredictable. You think you get it figured out, and then the next thing you know, we're all so different, and you can't control anything, and it's just like up and down, you got to ride it right all the time. And there's a song on the album, and you know where I'm going with this, you know, which is Brother the Cloud. And you know, we've seen a lot of pain in the last couple of years, and we've seen a lot of people, it's been very evident, because we're actually looking at each other for the first time ever in my lifetime, where the whole world is sort of looking at each other in one focus. It's not like I don't know what's going on in another country. We're all going through, to some degree, a similar experience. So it's leveling it all up. And that song is really powerful. And did it catch you by surprise? Did it catch you off guard, that song?
You know, I guess those feelings must have been just waiting to come out or something. It just came out quick, and then you know, by the time we got to the end of it, it was like, okay, that was something. All right. And you know, I've lost a few people in different ways in the last decade, and apparently, just like you said, as soon as you think that you have something figured out, you know, you're about to find out the otherwise. You know, something else will come along. But this one, I guess, informed me that I hadn't quite dealt with as much as I thought, or at least in a positive way, or I still had a lot of emotions kind of, you know, under the surface. There was a fire inside my core that was still, you know, like spitting magma.
Oh, but it's so funny that you didn't. There's a moment in the song where it's like, put your arm around my friend, and I'm waiting for it. Like, I'm waiting for that moment that you've given us before. It's like, all right, I'm gonna let this shit go, like, yeah, you know, and you didn't. You were like, fuck you. Like, I need this to be really, like, you, like, look at me, like, I need you to know you gotta say this. Like, it's not like I'm not irrational here.
Yeah, and maybe after the f you, then you get a big smile and then you get a hug, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe that's
What are friends for,
what
huh?
we're for.
That's a powerful question.
Yeah, break your heart.
Break your heart.
You know, somebody I talked about in Jersey the other night, right before the show, somebody texted me. They thought it was another friend that we had in common that it was referring to, particularly. And he was one of the Newtown dads, one of the Sandy Hook fathers. I'd got to know quite a few of them, and I was real close with him, Jeremy, and he was actually supposed to come and visit me, stay at my house a few years back, I believe in January of that year, and I think we had a good long talk around Thanksgiving. He's gonna come visit in January. He had some work to do up in Washington. He's a neurologist, lost his daughter in that tragic massacre, and her name was Avielle, and he started something called the Avielle Foundation, and about 2 weeks before I was expecting him at the house, then he committed suicide. And I had to tell the friend who thought it was, maybe I was referencing Jer, and I said, no, that's the one. But after that, you know, sometimes it's hard to find forgiveness in people that have committed suicide. It's hard to forgive them. You can be angry for a long, long time.
Yeah, he captured it beautifully on that song, and I think.
But it wasn't. I wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
this friend of mine knew it was not about Jer. That when somebody, if you lose your own child to something that maniacal and insane, that would be a very, very difficult one, and I would never judge him. And you know what? Another one I just thought of too. When you say suicide, Ian MacKaye has a lyric, and no more suicide. It kills everyone. That was from the band Embrace, that record. Sometimes people, maybe they do that to hurt someone. But they don't expect it to hurt so many people.
Yeah.
There's just no way. There's going to be a lot of collateral damage in that.
Yeah. Well, that song is really powerful acknowledgement of a lot of those emotions that I think people have to suffer in silence, in private. And I'm sure it's the kind of song that, because of the power of it and the kind of life you live, that will have everybody wondering and talking. But at the end of the day, it's your song. And it should mean something to people in their own way. It doesn't really matter who it's about in a strange way. It's about everyone. I want to make sure that we finish this conversation this time talking about your super flossy guest list on this album. It's like
Super flossy.
most people are like, let me manifest something here. Can I get Elton? No, I'm gonna get Elton, I'm gonna get Stevie, I'm gonna get Ringo. Like, it's the best thing ever because it's just so, it's just perfect. And every one of them shows up and plays the perfect version of themselves in relation to their relationship with you. So Elton sounds beautifully Elton, and Stevie just is like Stevie on fire. And even Ringo just puts in the most Ringo of Ringo performances, you know? How did you get that? I mean, you just got to talk me through it. I don't even have a question. This is just a reflection.
I think it was like, you know, creating a painting and then knowing that, you know, within that, and you've tried to create all these little bit of different colors, you know, you kind of invented these colors on your own. And then knowing the exact color that you need for that part And it's kind of an important part. And if
Yeah.
you had that, that's what we need to really make the song. But who has that color? What color is that? And then the color is Stevie. But so it's either you do something like that, or let's say the Ringo example, because that would be that's the perfect color. So you can try to mix that color on your own.
Yeah. Chad, can you play like Ringo?
Of course he could, it just wouldn't be. And then it would be like, well, it's like a ring. Well, we can, but actually to have, the inventor of the color himself, then it's, we're just very fortunate to have had the.
Were you there when Andy said to him, "You're the best"?
Oh, Andrew said something, like, Ringo, you're just the best, man. Thank you so much. You're just the best. And Ringo, he says, looks up, no, Andrew, you're the best.
And Andrew stops and goes, I'm the best.
Yeah, it is. I'm the greatest.
That's what I love about
He
these
started
people.
laughing. He says, I say that to all the drummers.
I love it when
Couldn't have been sweeter.
But at the same time, couldn't it be more of a if he tried? That's what I love about people like that caliber, is that they've learned to be sweet in order to offset the anxiety of meeting Ringo Starr, but he's still, I'm Ringo Starr.
And then Stevie, Stevie's one of the greatest, well, certainly the greatest drummer that can sing.
Yeah.
In the history of music.
You've seen Summer of Soul, right? Have you seen Summer of Soul?
Incredible.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
There's my case right there.
Yeah.
But we thought about, him playing drums on something. But then we had this idea of because there's a song called I'll Try on it. And we cut it kind of a little slower version. Took most of the day doing it. And then at the end of the day, or maybe the next day, I thought we really should bump that up. It's a good song, but we just, let's friggin' get through it, It changes the lyric from being like, okay, here's like a bit of a testimony, or I have an issue that I want to bring up, and just shut the fuck up. You had 20 beats per minute on it.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our issues, but let's have a blast doing it.
Yeah.
Then for some reason, we had the theory of what if Stevie played on this? We'd never heard him. Just something we hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
So then it's taking that color, the color of Stevie Wonder, which is one of the greatest tones of all time, and putting it into a place where you least expect it and having it be beautiful.
And my thing is to stay in the moment as much as I can, right? And I'm doing a lot of work on that, and it's actually good. It's a practice, and I'm getting better at it. So I want to ask you, how good are you at that? As someone who is constantly in your job description being kind of reminded of your past, because that's what we do as fans. We can't help it. Even play that song. Okay. And then being focused on the future, because you are a futurist in the sense of where are we going? How do I make things better? How do I help? What's your relationship like with the present? And how much time do you really get to spend in it?
I think it's not only living in the present, but it's like slowing down the moment. And of course, as you get older, I think you want to slow down all the moments.
Right.
It was, in some ways, a very inopportune time to get COVID. And then in other ways, it might have been the best time, because it was about 2 weeks before this tour started. And you get hit by this thing.
And did you get hit by this thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then you realize, and when it happens to you and everything you've read over the period of the last year and a half, 2 years, and now all of a sudden you get hit. I'll tell you one thing, I'm so grateful I was vaccinated and boosted, because you feel it and you think, okay, this could be it. Thank goodness that booster made me feel like I had an armored jacket on, But you still will go through 2-3 days where you think, this is, are you f***ing kidding me? This is it. Are you f***ing kidding me? This whole life, my favorite life I've ever had, still working on it, still getting to, and with kids, young kids, wife, home, all these things that you've worked for, are grateful for. And it's all going to be taken from this one thing. First of all, I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want to wear
An armored jacket.
the armored jacket.
That's been one of the most fundamental reminders of how we are as a species capable of just being so fundamentally resolute in our belief and so fundamentally different.
Well, I tell you, when it happens to you, I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Yeah.
And it's happened to a lot of people, and it's continuing. You did a lot of soul searching in 2-3 days with COVID. And the second you find out you have it, your wife looks at you and says, "Do you feel okay? Because you're positive." You say, "Okay, I felt I had a little something." You know, if a scratchy throat, a sore throat is one of the symptoms, a singer is not going to be able to. A singer has a sore throat pretty much all the time. It's just what we do. There's a little bit of a lump in there all the time unless we have 2 weeks off. And so I'm not going to figure that out. So I'm positive. You do not hug your wife. You do not kiss your wife.
Immediately. No, if you're a good person,
You go to jail
you
without passing
and
go.
you do an audit on everyone you know. Who have I spent time with?
That's
Well,
right.
I mean, that is one of the coolest things about it, is that you immediately take your own health out of the equation and start prioritizing everybody else that you know or don't even know well.
Yeah.
Oh, I went into that store 2 days ago. Seemed like a nice person.
And then you watch your daughters through the window, and you wonder as you go to sleep, am I going to wake up? So
I'm glad you're here. I'm sad that others are not. And I'm so happy you made this record because of everything that you said so eloquently about the future, not just about what we get right now listening to it, because it's fucking awesome album, Eddie. But it's like, oh, cool. How is it gonna inform the next thing? How is Mr. Head to Toe and Gucci gonna take my favorite band?
is that what that is?
I fucking know, something high end. I love it. You guys just come straight from rehearsal and it just came straight from fucking Fashion Week in Paris. It's the best look ever.
That's funny.
It's incredible. I mean,
Thing is, I think you can get the same shit at Target. It's in the kids section. Sleepwear.
so is this really what you're going to be called even when you're not touring with Eddie now? Because this is this kind of pretty much the same group of musicians that come together and work on various projects. This is the kind of what house band in a strange way, right? In a traditional rad kind of sense. And I sort of wonder, like, are you just now the Earthlings? Is that kind of just what you should be?
Probably, yeah.
Probably,
yeah.
right?
The Wrecking Crew, the Earthlings.
Yeah.
We like to think of ourselves as like Muscle Shoals, kind of.
It's got a definite feeling like that, but it's also really amazing how adaptable you are to each of the artists that you work with. I mean, each record that you've played on feels very different. It's testament to you as a producer, but also as a player, Josh, you got to step into the room and you have to be fully adaptable, right? Is it fun for you to kind of be in that make-believe space of like, cool, what do I get to do to fit this person?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think because of what we were talking about, playing with people for years who are sort of older or established, I've often tried to just sort of serve whatever I'm doing, and it changes a lot. So yeah, it's easy for me, and it's always fun.
Which is easier though, because when you were in the Chili Peppers, there was always a sense of improv. Certainly live, when you would come out and play on stage, it was like, look, I mean, we're going to tune for 4 minutes before we even play our first song. You know what I mean? The whole thing feels very improv. And then you get into this room where it's like you have to work to structure. Like, do you have a preference, or they're different disciplines, right?
I guess they are, yeah. But just as much as live or studio are different, you know. So I think there's a lot of live energy in the work we do at Andrew's house, and we're essentially as close to each other as we would be if we were at this table, which is more connecting than you find even on stage.
That's true, because there's been photo shoots, and we've done a few shoots in your room, but it's not like there's that much footage around of the room. So for people who haven't seen it, it's small. I mean, it's to rehearse in. It's a great room to record in, but when you say, oh man, Eddie came down to rehearse there, and that's where it all got started, I was like, how did you fit in that room?
My favorite rock music of all time, my favorite music in general of all time, is highly improvisational music, is people playing with people. And so the whole idea of that room was to get rid of a control room. There is no control room. The live room and the control room are together. My engineer, Paul, who does everything with us, you've met before, Paul Amalfa, who's amazing, is at the desk, he's on headphones, he's right where your camera guys are, and he can see us at all times. We're all communicating. We're just all there sitting. Because of that, it makes, you don't want to miss something.
Yeah.
All those records that we love, the Zeppelin albums, the Black Sabbath albums, those were all made pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Even the first Pearl Jam album, right?
Yeah.
Was kind of made pretty quickly.
And we go out of our way to kind of get smaller too. I mean, like there were a couple takes we would do where I'd have to move from the cymbal because I was so close to Chad. And,
I mean, that's a lot of energy to be that close to Chad.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there are
Oh, yeah.
few drummers in the world as
headphones.
powerful.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
my hearing has forever suffered because of my being drawn to him on stage and being like right next to his cymbals for 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, because you do.
worth
I
it,
mean,
though.
I've seen you. What'd you say?
It's worth it. though.
Yeah, I've seen you obviously perform with Chad multiple times, and then and on this tour as well. I've been watching the footage, and you do. There is a gravitational pull, in particular for you toward him, right? Is that something that is fully subconscious?
Maybe it's from my starting as a drummer. I'm just very connected to what he does, and obviously I'm looking out. I'm not necessarily looking at him, so I'm really hyper aware of everything he does, and I always look to give him a little love when he does something, special or changes it up a little bit. So from day one, I was always interacting with him like that, just kind of drawn to him like that. He's back there by himself. You gotta go.
One of the things I love about this album, about Earthling, is that it feels like you are lovingly reflecting himself back at him. That you're showing him, these are some of the things that you do that you may not even be aware of anymore, that are just wonderful and brilliant. And I wonder if that makes sense to you, and if that's kind of what part of the process was. It's just letting Eddie know, like, we get you, and don't be afraid to let us show you how great you are.
There is so much of that in this record, and that you saying that out loud, I think, is the first time that's ever been even described like that, because it wasn't done intentionally. Me and Josh we're very, I'm proud to say it, like biggest Pearl Jam fans of all time. We know the catalog backwards and front. So I think when you sit down to go and make music with Eddie, your instincts take over, right? So it's not as thought as like, let's do something like this or that. It's just, what do you want to make with him? What do you want to hear him sing? How does that?
And it's a fine line, because a lot of artists, as you know, have been in bands and produced records and stuff. They don't want to be reminded, even lovingly, what they're great at. It's like sometimes the artistic spirit is so restless. It's like, let me break away from that altogether. But I do feel like he's actually embracing that on this record. He's like, no, cool. Like, this is a little reflective of who I am, rather than just breaking away from the last thing that I did. You know what I mean?
He's got the best voice there is. So.
Yeah. What was it like being such a super fan and getting behind the curtain and actually seeing the process of him writing and being in that creative process that you could have only imagined when you were actually listening to those records as a kid?
I still don't look at it as real. It doesn't feel like it was real. It was just this kind of like dream. It was like a dream sequence, which is continuing to the stage now. We're on stage playing the songs now, and it's like, oh, we wrote these songs. Like, it's just so cool,
And it seemed for us, both with how immediate a lot of it was at the beginning and when we were first coming up with the first few songs, it obviously the lure of how Pearl Jam wrote their first record in a couple days, and they played a show at the end of the week, and it seemed like that in a way. And I said to Andrew at one point, I'm not sure, because Pearl Jam got so big so fast. So I feel like from the second album on, it was always a lot different than it was that first time.
I agree. It was like they were trying to claim some new identity every single time, because we as fans had thrust this thing upon them, and it's like, does
But
this
they
fit?
were Pearl Jam, whereas on the first album, they were just the guys who had just met making music. So I felt like what we were capturing in that room was maybe a little bit closer to that he experienced with the band the first time, because they never again were they this little entity.
It's like you brought him back to that place and he didn't reject it outright.
It's also Eddie came from San Diego to Seattle and joined
San Diego.
Well, no,
yeah.
But when he went and made that first Pearl Jam album,
yeah.
he went and joined, a new scene, a new group of people. He brought what he had there, and that magic thing happened. And he came to LA and came and hung out with all of us here on this record. And it was like he was, again, just kind of coming into like another group of musicians. It was just cool to, even think of the parallels and stuff like that.
What was your favorite experience in the studio? Do you have one? Have you cataloged it yet? Have you started to reflect enough to be able to say, oh man, like I'll always remember that one?
Well, I think we all share this one particular Chad Smith moment for when we watched him, when we tracked In the Dark, the song In the Dark with him. That all of us will never forget that. But I mean, I was in the room for a couple of stunning vocals, And honestly, one of the greatest moments, I think, not just of this recording process of my life, was listening with Andrew and Ed to the recordings of Ed's father, which we included a little bit at the end of the record. But he kind of told us the story, told us about how through some former Chicago Cubs, this music that was recorded probably here in this city was made its way to him. And just sitting there with him, obviously that story being part of the story of the whole band that we've loved for 30 years, that was a special moment.
Just hearing the subtle similarities in their tone and the feel. And
He's not played those recordings really for anyone. It took him, he said, a long time to even listen to them. He carried around a CD with him forever of it before he listened to it, and he barely played them for anyone, just to, for him to feel comfortable enough and close enough with us to play us that.
Yeah, but that's evident across the whole record. That's what I love about it, is that there's very little in the way of head going on here. It's all heart.
What he gives to a vocal, I've never seen before. And you can hear it, right? But to see it, it's like, okay, I gotta move this chair and I gotta move that. Like, let's get those guitars out of the way, because anything could happen when this guy gets it up on the mic, He just reaches in a way I've never experienced. And watching him sing a song like Brother, and you're sitting, the best thing in the world for me is I put on these headphones and I feel like I'm again 10 in my room with headphones listening to the singer that I listened to when I was 10. There's a moment
in that song that just, when he talks about, put your arm around my friend, and it's like, here comes that moment when he's going to release, and the craziest thing happens. He does, but he does it in a really thoughtful, kind of restrained way. Like, that's a moment I would expect him to be like, yeah, right? But he's like, it's really like, make sure you say this. It's so different.
Yeah, it's like looking you straight in the eyes.
Yeah, there's no rage. It's all just, you need to do this for me. That song gets me every time because of the times. But I actually like the fact that, I don't like the fact of anything about that song because the subject matter is so deep and heavy, but I respect the fact that it's become something that should be applied in a universal way, because right now,
100%.
more than ever, people are in pain. And that's why I think this album's so unique, because there's a lot of joy on this record. During really crazy times. Did that even surprise the both of you, that the way the record came out, given that it was made during COVID and there was a lot of... It is such an empath, I would imagine he would have reflected the pain more than the
I think
joy.
There's pain reflected on this album, for sure, but for us, it was almost like the escape.
Yeah.
And the release from it all. It's like, okay, all this f***ed up shit is happening everywhere in the world and all the way around, and we could just go into this basement, put on headphones.
Just be safe and create.
And I think it really does encapsulate both pure joy, the joy we all felt doing it with each other, and that time we spent closely, creating this thing that we didn't know was going to exist the day before. But there's obviously tons of pain all around us in our own lives, in the entire world. But somehow both of those things we were able to capture, I think, when I hear it. So, and I think that's what connects. And and I've never seen someone have as profound effect on the people in the room with him and 20,000 people in a field. It's unbelievable.
He's honest.
Yeah.
It's just honesty at its best, right? Like,
yeah, and it's pretty hard to do both equally,
I wanted to talk to you, Josh, about that moment that you got the call, or somehow someone in the band, or how they made contact with you after your departure from the Chili Peppers. And I'd imagine you were thinking, cool, what's my next era? Where do I go? The world's wide open. I'm a musician. What can I do? How quickly you got the phone call to sort of, join up with Pearl Jam in whatever capacity and be a part of their family?
8 days.
Wow, 8 days.
Eddie Vedder.
Yeah, and it was, we had planned a call on the 22nd of December, which would have been 7 days, but just something happened, schedules. I think Ed was in Hawaii, so time differences. So we wound up speaking on his birthday.
Beautiful. Did you have any inkling that was what was going to be talked about?
No, not really. I mean, there was I had a few conversations with some mutual friends about perhaps that there had been discussions about maybe they need someone to tour with them, but they didn't have any tour plans. Their record wasn't released or announced.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know any of the timeline. So I cannot understate how, and especially for what the next year looked like for everybody, what their invitation to join that family, having come from a beautiful family, you know, having 8 days of that, but then knowing that I had this this other group
This
that
experience,
cared
this
enough.
adventure that you could go on. Yeah.
Yeah, and even though it never happened then, and we all spent a year by ourselves.
Sure.
Just knowing that I was sort of accepted and invited to join this incredible family that I loved for so long.
And it is a family. I mean, if anyone has seen the movie, which is just over 10 years old now, and kind of 20, which obviously encapsulates the first 20 years of the band. Wow, that 30-year anniversary of Pearl Jam just went by in a COVID haze of nothingness, didn't it? It's like, we did nothing to celebrate that. I mean, you were making a record, I suppose, but it's like, I sort of feel like we should like have a post-dated celebration of that, because 30 years is no joke. Where the last 10 years go? It is a family, and what that movie really perfectly encapsulates is how the differences make them so special. How everyone, very honest, very different kind of human beings in a strange way. You know, joining a family like that, joining it just on a stage like that, like figuring out your place is, a challenge. It's something you have to be really thoughtful about and make sure you move in that way. I mean, have you had a chance to experience it yet to any degree, or do you have thoughts about it?
Well, we've done a couple shows now. We did Danny Clinch's festival in Asbury Park, New Jersey back in September, and then we did a few at Ohana, which is Eddie's festival. And yeah, so I've and we've done some rehearsing. We did the whole rehearsal period for the tour that didn't wind up happening in March. So I've had enough time now to sort of, to where I feel like I know everybody and have relationships with everybody. I mean, I knew them all to a degree before, but now I really feel
on stage it's like a different thing.
Absolutely,
too.
yeah. And I think it's just getting going, and it's still very early days.
Josh, this is the dream. I mean, this is the dream. It's the phone call you get. Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam. Are you kidding me? Like, well, come on. It's like when you're a kid and you're listening to those records, you're like, man, I'd love to be in one of those bands. You get two? It's fucking awesome.
Well, and I don't play the entire show, so I get to jump off my riser and kind of
watch.
jump
I just
around
want to
him.
say one thing about him.
Yeah.
Just like, everyone knows all of his contributions to a lot of our favorite records already, but having Josh in the studio, and I think just adding to what you're saying as to, like, that sounds pretty crazy, right? That it could be 1 week between leaving the Chili Peppers to being in Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
When someone like this guy is available.
Yeah, grab him. Yeah.
Because not only can he play every instrument, guitar, bass, sing, write, do everything, play the drums, he doesn't even care if he's playing on something. If he walks into the room, he'll be like, oh no, you should try this pedal, or you should do this, or he'll just be tweaking sounds. Yeah. Whatever needs to happen, he helps make happen, and it's like, you can't find that,
Was it always going to be a limited run of shows just to bring the album to life and just then, get back to other things?
Yeah, I think the idea was just, it's so funny. There's nothing thought out about this process, literally at all. It was like, we made a song, because we were just kind of rehearsed, like they wanted to come by my house and rehearse, see the basement. We made a song, we had a drink, we listened to Lou Reed on vinyl. We said, should we make an album?
Which album?
Yeah, I guess we're making a Transformer.
Yep.
Then we were making an album. And then we were having so much fun making this album, we're like, should we play a couple of shows? Yeah, let's see. Chad, when can you do it? It's just like, so not thought out. So there's only 11 shows, right?
Yeah.
So there's only 11 shows, and obviously Pearl Jam and the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Jane's Addiction. Chris Chaney from Jane's is playing with us, and Glenn Hansard, who has his own illustrious, amazing career, is also in the band. So everyone's got their own thing going on. So
By the
it's
way,
kind of just like this one period of time where we get to do this with each other.
Chris is an incredible bass player.
Unbelievable.
But what about that moment in Ohana when you got Pino in the back, just sunglasses on, just literally, it's so cool. You guys are all just vibing off each other, thrashing off each other, and Pino's just in the back, just literally just going, with the sunglasses on, just looking left and looking right, just like,
well, I think there's two
coolest
things.
dude ever.
I think there's two parts to that. He's
and
the,
playing Give Blood.
He's the coolest guy, and he's also the highest guy on the stage. So I think that's
100%,
why
you
he
can
just
tell.
stays.
He's 6'7".
yeah, I mean, Josh, look at you, huh? In a state where it's not legal. Nicely done. Nicely done, huh?
and the way-
Save that talk for California, Andy.
The way Ed is like, okay, Pino's gonna play bass, then we got to play Give Blood.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what's Give Blood? I mean, I know I can get deep, but I didn't know that song. It's a song off Pete Townshend's album, solo
White
album,
City.
White City, and it was actually the first song Pino ever played on with Pete on a fretless bass.
This is why I love Eddie, because he knows this.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that informs his decisions. It's not just like, oh, I feel like this. It's like, I feel like this, but it can be connected to this and this and this, and then it's a real experience.
Exactly. And then, as always with him, that's a song that people in the crowd don't even know. And then once they hear Eddie's version of it, it becomes something they want every night. He makes, like, fan favorites out of B-sides.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun to play that song. It's just great.
Are you going to pick one or two songs for the last few shows? Are you going to add things? Because, I know it's a very spontaneous set list. You're going to, like, show up to the boss and say, hey, look, I know you make the set list with an hour to go, but...
He's definitely...
Yeah, you're getting the elbow in? What's the dream? What's the one you haven't played that you... Because you may never get... Look, I'm just going to be, like, super dark on this. You may never get to play with Pearl Jam ever again. You know what I mean? They got enough guitar players now, bro. It's maybe a one shot. Like, what would it be? What would be the one song you'd love to play on this tour?
Any and all. I would literally love them all.
How much fun has it been for you? Simple question. This whole experience, working on this album with Ed and just touring and the whole thing.
It's rare when you just get to hang out with your friends and play music and have fun.
That's it.
I've known Eddie longer than this guy's been alive.
Yeah.
That puts it in perspective. And we all played a lot of music together. Obviously, me and Josh has, and then we make records all the time. And then just to have this all kind of happen just so organically. And then I in the summer I went to be with my family on the East Coast, and he's like, okay, you have to come back for find me a window. And I'm like, all right, 1 week in July, and literally like 6 days.
Yeah.
And they probably told you, but the process was really, Ed had some songs, and then the three of us would get together, and these guys would have acoustic guitars, and who's got a riff, who's got an idea, something. I would just kind of sit there and make suggestions about the arrangement, thinking about the drum part, not playing, no playing, because he knows. It's like...
Get it in one, get it in two, maybe that's it.
Maybe three, just for safety.
Sure.
But it's a performance.
Yeah, of course.
Which is rock and roll,
Of course. Well, I wondered about that, how much you actually think about the drum part, because so much of it feels instinctive when I hear it.
I don't.
Right.
You got to kind of have an idea of what you're going to do, so but that's spoken about a little bit.
But he lets the song sink in for
Chad's
hours.
Toro. It's literally like Toro with the bull.
Yeah. When did you figure out that being in the moment, right, which is the key of everything, but is ultimately the goal if you're a live musician? It's what jazz musicians figured out right at the start in this town.
Damn, you're fucking handsome, man.
Thank you.
Good looking man.
Thank you, man. When did you figure out that was where you needed to be? Because not every musician is. A lot of musicians are very practiced. They're trying to figure out the arrangement. They go in a different way. And you figure out, no. What suits me is to trust my instincts and then figure it out later.
You have to have facility on your instrument to a certain point, So there is practice involved, and so you have, the tools to be able to do what you hear in your head when you hear a piece of music. Yeah. At least for drumming, not being a melodic instrument rhythmically, and that's obviously a lot of practice, and it doesn't just happen like that. But most of the bands that I grew up listening to were a lot of spontaneity, jamming, the Deep Purples and the Zeppelins and the Who's and those. I love those drummers and those bands. That kind of early on was ingrained in how I kind of approached
it.
Yeah, the most important thing, you can have your chops and your thing and all that. These things on the side of your head, that's the best. And these guys are such good listeners. And that's so important. You got to listen to the other guys when we're playing this kind of music, because you play off each other, the dynamics of what they're doing, even just live show, everything. So it's just capturing that. That's the lightning in the bottle, and that's what you try to do, but you don't all succeed.
No, for sure.
But when I was young, I always just, that felt the most authentic to me, and that's when you're in the moment, and there's no, people just feel that.
Here's the thing I love about Chad the most on his drumming. Everyone knows you play your ass off. Everyone knows you're a powerful drummer. But the thing that I think most people recognize now, given the legacy you put into your music and on record and on stage, is that you are this incredible chemistry. You attach yourself to other musicians and you make it better just through the chemistry and through the ability of playing, right? Now, there's a question here, because you had that for a long time with Josh and your other band. And then, of course, that era ends and another era begins, and you're thinking, I got chemistry with this guy.
course.
How great was it to be able to know that that can continue,
Yeah.
even just for you?
It's really fun. We were at the first gig. I just looked over. I gave him a big hug. He goes, "I'm so happy to be able to look it over here." Yeah, we have a great
so
thing.
rare.
We're very like-minded. It is rare, and so you don't take it for granted. And as you get older and play music for a long time with a lot of different people, there's people that you just. It's like you dance good together. Whatever you do together, you know what I mean? That's a thing. And when you find that, you don't like. You really, I appreciate that, and I love to do that. So
And these two have it,
Totally.
unfathomably. I mean, you guys have been playing together how long? 5 years? 4, 5, 6 years?
yeah, I mean, I don't know.
A lot of birthday parties.
Oh, wow.
A lot of birthday parties.
Yeah,
we
well,
were good.
2014.
Weddings, birthday
Seriously.
parties, bat mitzvahs,
Really?
4th of July parties.
Funerals.
4th of July, whatever. Funerals, New Year's Eve, we don't care. We'll play.
When I
Anyway.
first watched
But
them
he
work
just loves it.
together,
Yeah.
I saw that instantly.
I just love the idea of him going to work at the other company, just being like, behind the kid, Josh was on fire today, man. Oh, fuck, he was fucking killing it. How you doing, John? What's going on? Just,
Wow. Hey.
you gotta have some fun with this, man. No one gets to be a double agent in this world. It's one or the other. It's fucking awesome. Getting to Earthling and the Earthlings and the fact that you get this sort of call from Andy sporadically, and it's like, hey,
No.
I'm in the studio with Ozzy.
We talk every day. So
Okay,
it's
okay,
not
but
sporadic.
okay. So then, within that conversation, that friendship,
Yes.
there's a conversation of like, hey, I just Ozzy's coming over, or Elton's coming over, or
He comes from a rock and roll background. He does all this other stuff because he's so talented. He can do anything and play anything and write, and he's so good with people. And I've seen it, and I'm so proud of him as my friend. To see him do that and rise. I saw him conducting the fucking orchestra at Abbey Road, telling them what to play and shit. Like, yeah, god damn, little kids up there, purple hair and all my fucking session musicians. No, I think it should be like this.
stakes is high because orchestras don't play.
It's just so fun because we love to hang out and we're best buds, and then to play music together, whatever it is, and obviously we've done rock stuff together, and the Ozzy record was really special and amazing, and had a great time doing that. How that all came together and was incredible. But just like, he does a lot of pop stuff, as we all know, and like if he needs drums on it, he'll be like, hey, play this Dua Lipa song. I'm like, who's that? Obviously now, but the last record and whatever stuff that I would normally was not in my world, but I it's so great to like put that hat on and try to make something really cool to please that artist and make it right for the music. And Andrew is so good at that. And it's like, it's fun. Who would never thought
It's fun. If this isn't,
it should be fun.
If this isn't inspiring people
Fun.
right now watching this to apply themselves, albeit enough to be able to get the chops so that they can actually build a world that's fun, like this, like watching the way you guys interact with each other and then hearing the result does more good for music than any industry component, business side of things. It's the inspiration of it. That's why I think you capture really more than anything. It's just inspiration. You do.
Well,
As a producer.
yeah. That's why he's
Grammy-winning producer of the year. Where's your Grammy? You got it in your bag? I carry it with
Actually, they say, and Josh was with me. They say when you get one, you got to take a shot out of it,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
all the great videos of all time of
Yeah.
everyone taking a shot of it. The day my Grammy came, Eddie came over for the first time, so I got to take a shot of tequila out of my Grammy with Eddie Vedder.
Really?
Yep.
And he took a shot out of a Grammy? I was surprised he didn't piss in it.